Hello everybody, good afternoon. I'm going to speak with a big distance from the microphone. Welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure here to have today with us Winy Maas. Most of you know him either as an architect, either as an urban planner and designer, either as a critical thinker of architecture and everything that surrounds the life of architecture. And some others of you know him as part of the Master in City and Technology program. He's one of our faculty. He's the principal of the MVRDV. I think that there is no need of explaining too much about the work and the firm of Winy. But I do want to explain, first of all, that Winy every year is challenged to do a different lecture here. And I think that's not an easy task for an architect. He's always delivering, I have to admit. And it's impressive because each part of his work have different kind of levels of complexity and address different kind of aspects and problematics. So he is the kind of architect that he's capable of really dealing with, on the one hand, built architecture, but on the other hand, really all the necessary aspects that you need before and after building the architecture. He's also the director of the Y Factory at TU Delft. It's a laboratory working on the future cities. And here at the IAAC, he's working with our students on what he calls a robotic city. Today there was the presentation of the projects, and it was very obvious the interesting aspect of understanding what robotized, what robotic, what automatic is, and how can this be applied in a speculative design for our future cities. I'm pretty sure today he's going to be jumping from different scales of his projects. I challenged him this time to talk about an architecture that is showcasing that the idea of starchitect dies. So I think this is challenging for an architect that he's really on the top of practice. I think this is already interesting, the fact that he's taking the challenge. So thanks for that. Let's see how architecture can go beyond the architects and be more serving the people. Thank you, Winy, again for being here with us, and please help me welcome Winy Maas. Let's try this one.
Thank you very much for your introduction, and it was a pleasure to, as I showed already in the video just before, today to end the workshop, which was basically about an evolutionary city that ultimately would be made by not by students or by architects, but by nature itself. It was and you can say, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Where are we if life is taken beyond us? And I think that it already itself is an answer to what Areti was asking me to do. The fact that it could look like this, and that we would have a future which would be even, say, more hippie-esque than any dream in the 60s could be imagined. But in to ask that question, I want to take you, of course, to what's before in that way, and because you can talk about that. It's indeed this evolutionary city, and I remember a year ago, and it needs this challenge to talk every year in a place like this, because you know the work. So so this X3, this what's next, is a helpful question, not only for you but also for me, to see my own progress. And some of you said you should read this book, and which I did at that moment. And it was like you and many have been doing. And it was nice to see that in that way, when a question about evolution, this book says, yes, there is direction as such, and this direction fascinates me since then. So of course, this question has also to do with this guy that somehow died, and then this letter appeared in the Time magazine, what's in the name, to perform even better, say, after him. So what's now? And there is a list of things that we are facing more and more. And I think the Biennale in Rotterdam yesterday was about this also, in order to address what we should work on. And that means that there is an agenda. And this agenda, I find it interesting, especially in these days, also in political Spain, where you have this kind of fresh government, and to discuss basically politics in a kind of apolitical way. And so sometimes I ask this question on this agenda to many people, and then the question is, don't you want to be? And there are many subjects that is hard to say no to. Who doesn't want to be responsible? Who doesn't want to be open or curious? Where's the person that hates green or that doesn't want to produce energy, food, oxygen, that doesn't want to be biodiverse? Where is the person that doesn't want to be human or social, intimate, open, accessible, yes, democratic? Who doesn't want to be free or adaptable? Who doesn't want to love diversity? It's a given. And how, and etc. And if not, who are the persons that hates history? So in the end, who doesn't want to be lovely or beautiful or exciting? So in short, this agenda, this future city, is about wonderfulness in that way. And somehow that works. This bucket list of desires is more than only green. It's only more about the climate change. It's also about diversity. It's also, yes, it's about the social agenda already. And that we have to do on all scales. Yes, everything is urbanism, I always call. I mean, you can make one small thing and boom, it's a prototype for more things in that way. So more than ever, we have to do that. So what I would like to do today is to take you through 3 of those items that has to refer basically to what we've done in the workshop here. It's about greenness, it deals with history or with the past, and it's talking about liberation somehow, and the paradoxes of liberation. First, some words to show you, because the work is not only done by, say, by MVRDV, here our office in Rotterdam, as some of you know, or the place in Shanghai, and recently in Paris. It's also done by the White Factory, and here we are there, and you know maybe the place, this tribune, to gather each other, to make things, to sell things, to talk with politicians, and finally to produce also this kind of, say, literature or games that we're aiming at. So what is next? And I start with this green city. And that started in that moment with the green dream that we painted a while ago, just for you to freshen up your mind. A while ago, who can be not against green? And some warnings were done by our students that green buildings are ugly. If you look to what they produce, incredibly, they are cliché, they're small windows, only green roofs without usage. It's quite slow, the process still, and it's green deeds are not enough to make it to speed up. But they do have impact. That's what I'm happy to share with you. And that leads again to better places. Yes, we need to calculate. We need this parametric design, therefore, to do it. And there is a lot of laws in the world that are there but don't talk with each other. So we show like a new kind of language that we need to make the great scale involved, to have green dreams everywhere, and to walk on a city that is the greenest. And that looks like this. I was explaining, and that is pretty Dutch, say ugly, because it's rational only, and it lacks certain kind of emotions. It's hidden behind the rationale. And we painted these dreams together that now somehow are under execution. Yes, if you have a crop rotator like that, then we can feed our cities. And then Costa Iberica will be somehow more self-sufficient. Who cannot avoid this kind of dream? Or if we harvest, say, our water in like dense circumstances, then Cairo would make sense with this kind of pyramids again. Or if we put, say, bacteria in our water that illuminate our canals, then we can put off the lights of our houses. And gradually, yes, we use our suns to make more collective appearances in the Bay of Phuket. These were things done by students. And now, like this one, under construction in Hong Kong. And that's very nice for the students somehow, that their patent comes alive. But what is next in that way? Well, after done that, and I'm happy to show that soon we make this book on biodiversity. Well, on how to use our cities also as habitats in that way. And that is, I think, one of the subjects of the workshop today. How to believe in food chains, where we know how many goats are eaten by a wolf, or how much chicken and how much rats in that way. And how, if you then calculate how much space they need to perform and to act, and if you combine that with, then say, certain kind of new products that I would like to sell, that you have to sell as students on the market, and you put that on the canvas of our cities, in this case Lille, could have been Barcelona, then this would be the products that creates a life for bats and for certain kind of animals in that way, that we could span of our roofs, and that we would extend Stefano Boeri's dream into a much more, say, profound way, and then cover our cities like that. Then suddenly Lille would be beautiful after all, and even the memories of Lille would be there. And the program can notate, you will see it soon, that how far are we to establish these good habitats. That's biodiversity. And what was next in that way? I mean, I went afterwards also to Costa Rica, and which is a funny place because you have roads like this, and they have quite cool facades. Or if I go over the canals in Costa Rica, then somehow they are nicer than the Canal Grande in Venice. They have a facade that are more diverse than anything. And here you see a whispering wall to test certain plans with the National Park Service to see what kind of, say, angles we need to make this kind of green city achievable. Thanks to Costa Rica in that way. So what is next? In Sapiens, I can read it. Here, you see it. Biology enables, culture forbids. That's fascinating in retrospective for our studio and our comments today, to be honest. Or if I go further, here another one. From a biological perspective, nothing is unnatural. Ooh, that sounds your school somehow. So how to blend these issues is what we are doing. So of course I take you for a moment to Seoul. Why? Because I want to show the next step after, say, this gray city is making. You know what happened. And when they changed the plaza in front of the town hall into this, say, camping ground that became the most, say, protest environment of the city. Or when they changed, say, this boulevard into this canal and one of the best, say, promenades of the city. Or when this area before the building of parliaments became accessible at that moment. Yes, the president had to go. Somehow there was a kind of, say, discussion. A more democracy came out of that. I find that still fascinating how that operated. I think our bridge, Solu, was participating in that. We tried to see what kind of impossible area in that moment could be, say, starting to be more accessible, funnily, not by cars, but by meeting each other. So the design was basically how to get to work with this kind of monster. The half of the budget goes into the strengthening. New foundations, new girders, and indeed a new floor has to be made to stabilize this viaduct for maybe the people that come there in that way. So that we used as a frame to make a story out of this bridge. We didn't have enough weight anymore that we could put on for earth. So we had to do it in pots. And the spots, say, are minimal because but they can be big and small. And then they could be beautiful like this, or here the ginkgos, or here the rocks, or here the water area. So how to choose? We couldn't, because we are diverse. So that led to this Arboretum project where we selected the trees of, say, Seoul, put them together, and said, but this is a beautiful list. And put them then in an alphabetic order, Korean alphabetic order. And we use it as a test place for all the species that grow in artificial circumstances with the University of Agriculture in Seoul. And this leads also to a next project later in Amsterdam that I will want to show. So it is accompanied by text to understand it, by utilities, because you want to pee, you want to drink something, or you want to buy, you want to read, and they all occupy one species. They're combined with light because it's 24/7 and not like in New York in that way. So it wants to be more open. And then, yes, more access is needed. That leads to satellites, we assume, just around it. So what was happening? We made tests. We saw that some things were functioning and others less, like this light or this infrastructure that we built up. We adapted it and we could start to make it. And then this walk arrived. You go from A to B to C and have these different gardens over there. And yeah, you connect, of course, program that somehow become successful in a while, and more bridges were nice to make. And then you inhabit it not only by plants, but also with people in that way, where they can dance, where they can walk, they go access. And of course, I think these lines are important because the plants need to survive at -20 Celsius or at +40 Celsius. How to do that? With cooling the plants and heating them. And that's how this technology is now tested with all the species. Oh yeah, you can swim over there and you can jump, don't worry. You can picture yourself and everywhere in a way. I think it's an art to make buildings where you don't have one picture point but 1,000 in that way, where you can make your selfies. And then you cross the bamboos, you look down to the traffic, you go into the pine tree area, you hang around this, you go and climb these objects and look back and forward, again a selfie of course, and then go further along this viaduct between the roses, have a kind of dance or the theater play, look to all the climates that we need, also to how they differentiate in every species that's all along this track. And by coincidence you have variety. No composition? Yes. Is it scientific? Semi. But is it like a way to show that I am impressed by nature and that I want to show that richness all over this viaduct? And what was next? Take you to just now. When you were in the evening, then this is happening. People hang out in these different places. So somehow it sorts where you want to be, and you stand there or you make these selfies as communication. So it becomes a park in that way, and what goes on from during the day to the evening. A park that floats over the traffic, and where we can look around, make again these pictures, have dances, walk further. Firemen over that, plants that are illuminating the space. In this floating, say, blue light, there is a kind of cosmos of stars, and that are lit by the white lamps, and that turn the plants into the stars. And how it becomes, say, 2 o'clock in the morning, a place to be. That is nice. I learned that from Barcelona somehow, and not from the Netherlands, and definitely not from the parks in London or in New York. So this is something that we can overcome fear somehow. With this kind of illumination and this kind of presence, we somehow can continue. But I must say that half of the budget annually goes to this. And that there's a severe, say, war room almost behind it to keep that going. But that indeed, it becomes now like this soap series in Korea and in Asia. Yes, it's about love somehow, and it's somehow that is the role of a park. So let's go further in this trajectory and in the critique that happened over the planet. But what was next? When we started with this, then say somehow it changed recently into that. If I look further to it, then whoa, where are my plants? People are going around. We have to be more careful. Firemen get a bit unhappy in that way, and the numbers are a little bit increasing. 12 million people per year, same as Euro Disney. But that created at that moment what's next. So what's happening now, and that when this was first there and this is now there, I'm happy that we are working on about, say, 20 bridges that make it to the next step, and that transforms in the coming days into this. Yes, there will be competition soon for those that want to design this kind of dance theater or the area around the conference center. And these are steps that we can see in the nearby future. And then maybe gradually this gray monster that we called Seoul turns actually into something that is better than many European cities that has been actively involving greenness as a substance to make it better. So what's next then? Some of you have seen this, but also in this year, we're working now on the new central station. Towards the next step, you know where it is, there. It's a monument on the left side with a lot of, say, heavy emotions of the war and before that. and that cannot be changed. But what happens is that soon this situation, people will dig down and put the infrastructure, say, downstairs on that way. And then we can start to use it again. And when all this infrastructure is then below into, say, a new kind of series of connections, of, say, new kind of plazas, new kind of green, and next to it, new kind of developments that will be placed on it and will look like that. So the central station will look like this, a big pit, the lowered tracks in different ways. The pedestrian zone, the roofs, the plazas, the connections, and gradually how with the program it leads to this layered environment. Then it starts to look like this, an extension of the bridge with developing the species in a wider, say, test zone connected to the bridge as such, leading to this kind of, say, puzzle as such. But as it is planted in glass in that way, it will look like this in the evening. Somehow I could imagine the next, say, dance floor in this democracy at the moment that the North is joining the South. Would be nice to show it in that way. And from below in the station, I can imagine that it looks like this, where the floating trees are there in this glass and the tracks are in between, dedicating the roads that are there, showing the plazas that are there, and here how it could look like. That's what I could show. What happened, say, since I was here last time. What's next in that? Well, let's go back to Amsterdam then. Also something happening now. The Netherlands is not that bad. Again, a little bit, there are more economies in that way. So also this, say, ugly La Défense in the Netherlands, where we are asked to make housing now, plus offices and a museum, in an envelope which is so strict. So what we propose is basically first to love that south axis by mirroring everywhere the building, and then to nibble it down in such a way that we gradually have this beautiful, say, valley as such, that carves out the mirror and that shows maybe a vertical park. Okay, more programs are there, but it turns into an object. I mean, if you go around, this symbolizes maybe this momentum in the Netherlands from the wish to be corporate to wish to be more green. With a scripting, with a lot of knowledge to see what kind of bay windows we can make, how many gardens can we make, what species could go there. With the help of Korea, we are planting this now, where similar climates are there. And then this valley where you can walk from the bottom to the top can be imagined and can serve this kind of soccer fields around it and have this kind of, say, events. And I'm happy that what's next is an image of a couple of weeks ago or from yesterday, when I was flying into the Netherlands, that yes, it will be there, and I hope to see you in that valley in a year and a half. And what's next then? For a moment to Jakarta. Well, another one is coming up now. If this is the flatlands of Jakarta, if this is, say, the site where we are asked to make a wellness area, say basically shops and hammam and a boutique hotel, then opposite of that, our governor is living in that way. What does he want to see in that way? Actually nothing. So what we do is this basic, when this is the basement of that, and then we stack the different floors, the cinemas, the art house in it, then we cover it with this. And then you can of course, give light to downstairs that illuminates this. But then we can walk and over this, say, environment and cover it with a jungle, is what the plan is about. What is the technique of doing that? So here you see the different elements, how they are placed, how they're composed out of lava, stone, blend into a new kind of aggregate called concrete, lava concrete, how it fits with the plantation, what are, let's say, the scripted elements that you are doing here at the school also, that mount together and montage together. And then this is the mall that comes there. And my client, Lippo, asked, where is my mall? And he said, yes, that's exactly what it should be. In that way, so that we can go around, walk further, see it emerging as a new Borobudur somehow in Jakarta is what it wants to be. And yes, you have this beautiful, I think, development and this overview over the city. So what is next after making this kind of exercises in this, say, green environment? I take you now indeed to a city as such, to try to make a city. This is a longer part of the lecture because and I try to give you not only architectural, say, translations, but you are talking what the city can do. I am always impressed what Barcelona does and did in terms of, say, city planning and how that combined that with architecture and with implementations. And that is maybe what I try to do at the moment in Almere. Almere, you don't know it, it's kind of ugly city next to Amsterdam. It is designed for, say, poor people in the 60s and 70s so that they would go there and out of Amsterdam. And so it's a bit double, no, politically. This is the type of houses, very cheap in a way, but done in a way which somehow is beautiful, namely like garden cities that are surrounded by forest. So what is the next step is what we did is this 2.0, to grow what is happening at that moment. And we did it with many people. So you can see it here, this is the old city, this is the new one. Basically one metro line with different new neighborhoods, garden cities. In total, about 180,000 people that are to be, say, housed there in the coming 10 years. So an aerial view of it, how this metro line connects the different cities. One in the water that basically cleans the water like a new Atlantis. The next one like an Amsterdam neighborhood where this transforms into this, welcome Amsterdam. It goes further and where this plan wants to surround the lake with a new, say, neighborhood and then end in this area where this is now there to make an environment where agriculture and housing is combined. Let me give you a report on the Floriade, because that is this piece, the center of those exercises. We won that competition a while ago to get this World Expo on plants. And it's on this site. I still remember that moment that we stand there and REM has just made that center there and that we were asked to make this new center. So this is the view from my site to REM in a way. And this is what REM is going to look at in a while when we've built this. We do that by this, say, new mini city. Well, about 100,000 square meter of university program and hospital, and say about 2,000 housing units are soon to be made. And in the first step, up to 2022, we use the Floriade, we use this World Expo to give a kind of direction to show that actually it's beautiful to be surrounded by ranuncles or by plants and in different species. This is cool. I like this building. I like this tunnel. I love this wall. I love this kind of, say, couloir, or that can be done in different ways. We don't do it alone. There are many people that I would like to invite. Yes, Barcelona should be in it. And we can talk about it in a while. You get a plant, you get the money to build the house, and only the city of Barcelona has to give some money for the architect, some money for this 4 or 5 months to have some hostesses and to show that Barcelona can be also green. So if that happens, then this is, and afterwards we sell the house, basically. So no pavilions anymore. Not like Shanghai or like Hanover. And then I dream about this kind of houses where you can play piano, sports, or this kind of sports in underground world, dance here and there, or sleep. You sleep pretty well, or have this bath. So every program has a combination of a plan, studies it, and then turns it into a new, say, address. That is what we do. Here you see the highway. This is the new city with this 1,000, say, parcels that are going over the highway and then extend to this. This is the floor plan. And here again, we try to make this the most important clients. All the species that grow from A till Z that are then again explored, like in Korea, but in a much more, say, profound and deeper way. So how we orchestrate it from A till Z, from Acer to Zenobia. And yes, I can imagine that in Korea will do the boxes, the B section in that way very soon. And then these are the buildings as such. Here you can walk over the streets, how it's shown to the environment, and this is then, say, our say, boulevard along the sea, and this is how it shows to the highway as such. So yes, it's a city about plans. Again, where is my program? And I want to share with you how it's now going and how evolving. That's this initial idea, and that takes quite a while. Yeah, indeed, in the end, 6-7 years to make it. I warn you, yes, we have to. Urbanism takes time. Architecture and innovation in architecture takes time. Be prepared for that and try to do that. So this is what it is. We have an office on site. We develop the plan and practical elements. So we start to build. We change the highway a little bit, lower it, start to make new roads. So what is next? You can see it here. Roads are emerging on the site. Here how they are done in between and how its first test buildings are produced. So what is next in that way? We start to work on all the species. And why? Because we want to show them and know the knowledge. It's a library, yes? And it wants to, how good are they for our health or for our food production? How good are they for our biodiversity or for our energy? And then gradually you see this kind of list emerging now. Yeah, more than we have in Seoul. And what do we need for the letter A as such, and what is there? So we script, of course, and here the knowledge, your knowledge comes again into it. If we have from A to Z to that, how can we put that in? And this is the knowledge that's behind it at this very moment. It turns into a quite hyper barcode, so that every species we can flip during the process as such. And bop, immediately, somehow it's beautiful as such. And then we start to see how we can combine that with programs. And that can be then addressed in it. So here a list of the species as they are there, and how I show you in detail how it's going to look like. This is a garden, this is a city as such, with the different parts. How gradually pieces can come in, how we nuance it, how the building comes there, and then this kind of, say, images are possible in this environment. So it seems to become possible in this very, say, situation, is what this sequence is showing, how we are now working towards this kind of, say, destination as such, and this kind of interpretation. So what is next? Then we start to plant the species. Here the different species are coming, the first ones, to test how they are growing and how we can make them. But what is then next is how that every architect absorbs it basically. So we develop this kind of, say, let's start with the building system to imagine the different, say, situations with windows, and then add, say, potential species and technologies to that. It leads to a beautiful catalog already of certain kinds of elements that would fit in this case, from a Japanese to, say, a British to an Italian, say, way. We can apply that on this, for instance, this example, this section here, the B section with the Berberis section. Then it looks like this. Your buildings, the envelope that will be there, that covers it. Or in the C section, how we can imagine that. Whatever height comes up. So that's the starting point, and that leads to this updates of what the streets are going to look like. And every time we have to produce these new images in order to activate investors to do that. Of course, there are also specials in it. And you can see them here, where we need more time to explain certain species in that way, and we want to keep it over time as a sports field or as a special garden. And yes, we're also working on the beginning and the end, with how to start and how to end. What to do at A? Should it become alpha? Or Z? Should that become omega? Is what a bit the question is. So we have different approaches in that way. Let's start with say, if we don't find enough money for glass houses, then maybe we should do this. The first big towers that can be there can be surrounded by this species at the moment. Or, and here you see how that then evolves into this kind of ABS, the tower. Or in the end, the Z tower with this species, with this program, office program, starts to look like that and anchors then the collection. But then we can go further. What we try to do at the moment to finance basically two buildings that are glass houses. The Alpha Tower housing that lives with, say, tropical species, and an office building that lives with, say, the other part of the tropical species. You split them, tropical species, in arid and humid and non-humid. So then we can cover the climate, basically, of the world, where these towers deal with these two zones. So then it looks like this. I mean, the housing tower needs this kind of elements. It looks like this. The entities that survive between, say, the bananas as such, and then you have this kind of environment. Or the climate tower on the other side for the offices that has this kind of species and makes this section, a valley inside and balconies outside, and turns into this. Or a variety, if it should be cheaper, then we make bigger balconies like that. So that marks the two entities. But what is next? How to summarize all this knowledge? So I'm very happy to make the center at the very moment, where we want to get the people, get all the knowledge, show the overview, show the consequences of the future as such, and show what the green city will be there, all this knowledge that we now gather. We make two extra bridges on this very central part of the ETH Z, and we put this globe on it, a globe that is on the one hand a war room, where we show the knowledge and surrounded it with a program afterwards, the university program afterwards. And then we can make these floors for the university, We connect them with the infrastructure, you bend it up on the outside and on the inside, and you put some mirrors to it so that here, this is the only building that mirrors the complete, say, Floriana as such. You see it all, from all the distances. It might be there, or does it disappear? Is it there? Is it a Fata Morgana? Or is it, and in the best, say, classic tradition, World Expos, finally the ball of New York makes sense, is what I wanted to say with that. And then we make more icons. Of course, the hills are not there, because we are covering parking garages, and we do that with by there's having this arboretum, this green city over it, and then it starts to carves out this environment and turns it into this, say, section. I like it, that we can, so this is the deepening, this intention. This is what happened the last year that I didn't see you in around. So what is next? After this kind of, say, maybe boring knowledge that I wanted to give to you, but that is somehow hopefully helping you on what it... I need to make a middle chapter in that way. If a green dream is there, then something is still under it, no? So I call it, say, the historic city. So, and I showed you last time how we did with that history in Schijndel, my birthplace, this memorial basically of the architecture of the surroundings burned into the glass, and what comes out of that name and turns basically into an enlarged, say, average farmhouse that becomes an icon or a lantern in that village. Then what was next in it, I showed you last time how in Amsterdam we somehow could open up with Chanel this kind of houses, and we classified basically everything with bricks and with all the technology over there to make a new habitat thinkable in environment where old and newness and the transparency could combine, and where monuments loved it in that way and show it as a kind of extension of the existing. The history becomes more alive, gets more depth, gets an interior that is nicer as such, and showed it as to the world. But what's next after doing that? I think you go back to Seyur, and this is a dangerous project, so I'll note that, because it is in Paradise City. It's the next casino. Who wants to make casinos these days? How can we do that? Is that morally okay? And in that way? And it's on here on that tip. If you fly to Seoul, you land, and you see this new Paradise City in that way. And there are two buildings that we are going to make, and somehow I started to wonder what's the architecture of casinos in that way. And then we were given this architecture that is just made in Paradise City. So we imagined that maybe it would be more sublime to blend in and to accept this recent ugliness over it, and to simply imprint it on our building and such, and then start to manipulate that you discover. I mean, imagine you lose all your money and you come out and you don't know where you are and how to balance that is what it was. Or that you enter and want to go into a dance club. You have this moment of hesitation that you don't know where the dance club is, and it takes more time in the rite that brings you there. So this is the program. The two buildings, dance club and casino over that. One has to be connected for tax reasons, and these is say what all the facades are over there. And if we put them on the building, then somehow we can have this kind of blending act. We all think about it. But then we need to have some kind of access, so we can lift it here and there, we can lift it there. And then the client asked also to pay attention from the sky. When you land, there should be a spotlight. Okay, let's do that. And make this kind of golden element that goes over it. And that celebrates your entrance from the sky, but later also in the door. Then this would be all the surroundings. How it looks from above. And when you walk around, how it could look like this, what the bloodsack would look. And how to make that then? This is what the suggestion is doing. So what is next? This is image of last week. And now you can walk around, you see the emergence of the spotlight. You can go around, see the plaza as such. Yeah, here, the casino lifts you. You can go in that way. You can search further. You see it's not completely finished, but it's like also that how it blends with the environment, how you can open up the dance hall and go into it, and how it somehow activates the environment is what this is about. History continued or mirrored is the question in this case of this next step. And then I take you to Beijing for a moment, where a similar operation is now taking place. This is a place you know, in Tiananmen Square. And after CCTV, we are not to make any strange buildings anymore in Beijing. So what to do in this case? So here is the hutong. A hutong, like you know, like with nice buildings and ugly buildings, with nice memories, with many ruins, with nice streets you can bike around. So what's the next? Hutongs are somehow very beautiful. Yeah? They grow enormously. And this is how Beijing looked like and how it was painted and by different artists. And then there was a decay that was demonstrated in this famous picture because these things were entering. Then there was a comeback 10 years ago, maybe because some of architects were pleading for hutongs that lead to this kind of interpretation, more kermis than, let's say, than reality, or this kind of, say, import hutongs from, in this case, Taiwan, also interesting. And if you go further, and I see these new hutongs made by new technology, or go further, and I go to this kind of block areas, and here new hutongs are reappearing. So what is next? It is a moment that middle class is growing, and that somehow new urban neighborhoods are appearing again. We know that in Seoul we have it in that way. You have it in, you know, this place in Paris, in the Marais, how that works, or how it works at the moment in Greenwich, or in here also in Jordan. So that is the key of this situation. A situation that was cut by fire codes and by all kinds of, say, emergency codes in the last 10 years, and how to deal with that. So we had some hypotheses. Can it be combined with density, with how to do that then? That means basically if you have that you maybe lift the hutong by towers, that somehow then at the moment if I have a street, it looks like that. Or can we make a shopping mall in the very middle, when this is the hutong, we bend over that massive program, then it looks like that. Somehow a kind of Santorini in the very heart of Beijing. Or do we turn it into a park as such? Or sorry, in a hidden density, where you dig it basically, in an underground program, glass streets where you walk over the shopping mall? Or do we turn it into green, into a Pompeii-like environment, like the Forum Romanum of Beijing? Or can we imagine new life in a new town? And then just imagine that basically the 1700 courtyard houses are all different, that 1700 architects work on it, and looks like that. Somehow the clients, which is the government, decided to say, okay, somehow to blend this. And that led to a series of projects, like in Seoul, one could say. So here the projects are. So that means basically I can preserve some of this matter here, just like it is. No problem. With different techniques, showing how preservation would work. Maybe like this. We could have an interpretation project. A selected number of this kind of, say, courtyard houses are there to have interpretations of that courtyard in abstract ways, or in new kind of ways. I will show you later. Here's a very beautiful one. Like if you apply Scheinel technique in Beijing again, then this would be a house somewhere hidden and reveals itself in the evening. Or about communication. Yes, of course, someone can advertise in certain ways. Like this boutique house in that way, that would show, like in a mirror-like way, the beauty of hutong in an endless aspect. Or where it's more green, with grass houses somehow, or it cuts, say, topiary. We can make also this kind of, say, houses as such. And yes, on the river project that's there, we can houses that somehow show the river underneath itself. Wouldn't be bad to work in that kind of situation. Or when we need some kind of extra shopping, we cut maybe a passage route, like a knife that shows then the internal side of the hutongs to the world. Or we sometimes densify, like this one, with this kind of areas, with maybe something like this that we show that the hutong is alive as such. This was too much for Xiping, I have to say. Or the deep project, where we would say, okay, we dig it in like this way, also inverted hutong house. And the parking, where do I do that? Not too many cars. But it's a series of trajectories that are there. And I love this one. The house that just goes up for you and then goes down again when you're inside. And there are amenities that we explored. Here you can see them, like the library project. I think that's a very beautiful one, as subtle as it can be, and blend in to the stones. Or the sustainable projects that help for the energy. All together is the question. All the 1700 houses, 1700 projects are blended into this and leads to this. That's what we call the next hutong. where this would become that, where we could that, could be that. If I fly with my drone over it, I see this kind of new interpretations there, subtly, brutally, into this environment. What's then next? And we made first this kind of installation in the streets of Beijing, where all the houses are shown in a way, where the scale is there, and how the houses, even the lifted one, where when you see it like lanterns that are floating over the streets, and that make this illumination act for you. This became somehow a very successful way of communication. No words, but simply poetry. And like a hangout for the evening for clients, for all of them. And then we could establish this office with Wang Ling, maybe some of you might know her, to dream about this street to start with. These are choices out of the catalog that we're applying. Here you see, for instance, the mirror house. That's there in the catalog. Here's the site. That's what this one. So what does it look like in that way? These houses can be like this, with this kind of details, this kind of courtyards. How it can mirror the environment and leads to a parlor. And this could be a beautiful place for one of the boutique shops that are there. It's a mixed program, from social to expensive, is what is happening in this street. We were not allowed to show much on the outside, so it drips over it a little bit, this mirroring aspect. So what is the next? I mean, there are stones, there's wood, then we have a very nice guy from Beijing that paints it in that way, and it makes this thick aluminum over it. And I'm proud of the product. And the wood can rot because they have this aluminum that holds it at the moment. And the stones can deteriorate without any problem. And how a collection of this kind of silverness is now, say, produced. And that's what I hope to show you soon in this site. And what is next? The small one, which is like this one, or a quickie one, an opened house. Here another side, part of it there. This is the existing situation. Front. So what can we do with two patios? With a new destination, a new restaurant that could be there. And in a way we wanted to make, to transform basically the sequence into what? In one line. That you can go from the beginning to the end immediately and see the end. Simply doors, big doors, with all the difficulties in it to make it. And here are they now in the production. And now we can imagine this line is cut through from one side to the other. And what is next? Is the casted house. Yes, it was. Somehow in the collection I showed to you before. Here it is. How it looks like. It is with Rachel, of course. And I love her work. And somehow we do an interpretation of it. When you have these houses, here are the ruins. What is the concept? That we basically use foam to make these houses. Here are they there. So thanks to other architects that made it, but now the technique or developed the technique, we could now spray the concrete over this and turn it into a building with a restaurant on top and restaurants below. That's what it is, and then you cover it again with some light. But in the evening, it reveals itself. Somehow I come closer and I see the inverse put on as advertising this next step in our, say, situation. And where you go in and see and look to the bottom as such. That's what I wanted to show as a step or step method, what to deal with history as such. So what is the next step if I talk about that history as such? I take you for a minute to Albania. This year is the year of Albania in that way. Some of us know it, and I didn't show yet last time. But I think it's gradually now coming on our agenda even more. Because why? Because this is not a good image. Well, in the beginning, this is 10 years ago. Whenever time I came there, I always had police before and after me to go through the country in that way. Because of him, of course. He was mayor and now prime minister. He painted some of the houses in a nice way. He cleaned some of the stuff. He made his canals and opened them again and made them more clean as such, made plazas. So what was next? He became president and what to do. So he asked me also to make a painting, and that was a city tower project. That's this one. So that will become someone. I love that beautiful flag. And I know it's dangerous. Is this nationalism or is this actually in the tradition of communist architecture as such? Is it good for Europe? I think Albania is cool and it should be yell out. It's the poorest country of Europe, so why not? So then we continue with the Toktani, what was on this place basically, where we suggested in the competition something like that. And to make a market hall and offices on top, and you have a park where you bend it a little bit, and it looked like that. So they thought that they chose Zaha when they picked us. So, okay, yeah, okay. But we cannot afford Zaha immediately, so, because it's too expensive. And we don't have B80, we have maximum B25 concrete in that way. So, okay, what happens now? Cantilevers, 2 meters maximum. So that's what's happening. This is what then the translation says, Zaha Albanified in that way. And it actually looks beautiful, because you make terraces, and you make a space where you are surrounded by all the products. But this would be a new arcades over there with this material. Then we heard nothing about it. Somehow we bumped and came back to, hey, what's happening here? Another architect was developing it, because the permit was there, and he could make it and made this kind of interior. And now it's there. It's not our building anymore. But we created it, and he translated it as such. Am I angry? No. It's like a step in this way. So what is next? And then take it to Constantinople, a new hotel over there. This is an old villa from Italy, and that has become kind of a ruin. So the client wants to have a hotel there, but it's so small. So he wants to have extra program, but where to put it? So what we do now, we lift the building and make program below, so that you have somehow kind of a bigger monument. Very proud, a circle, where it leads to this kind of top floor. And the top floor, of course, is a pool where you can swim through the building and through in the ruins, like a good Tarkovsky movie. So what is the next? The Albi, I will show you. That's there, on this side, next to this river. It is a site opposite the biggest mosque. What can you do? Opposite the mountains, opposite the neighborhoods, looking to other towers in the neighborhood. So what is wished is the biggest tower. So that could be then this maybe. We twist it to the National Square in that way. And we start to pixelate it, we generate tubes for every house, and then we push them out a little bit. But on one hand it pushes out, on the other hand it pushes in, and shows the map of Albania in that way. Proudly, every one is a city as such, and that shows itself as an advertisement to the world in that way. And what happens with the floor plans, and this is earthquake proof, you see different houses that pop out and pop in and create therefore variety in a series, a production, a standardization product that is part of the Albanian, say, economy. That leads to houses like that, where you could see each other, meet each other, give the wine, and where at a certain moment, and then where the barbecues are on these terraces, and then Albania is in smoke on Saturday afternoon, is what this dream is about. What's next? Maybe another one, and now you send me out of Barcelona, but I will try to discuss it. The Skander. What is the Skander? Skander is like next, because look to Skanderberg Square, which is beautifully redesigned by a Belgian firm in that way recently. But it's surrounded by monuments like this, like this, like that, like this, like this. So what to add to that if we want to make Skanderberg stronger? So in this sequence of these towers that surround it, we were asked to think about Skanderberg. Skanderberg looked like this. This is the sculptor. He was the founder of Albania in it somehow. So what can we do? If this is the site next to, and this is the houses that we make, and we start to bend it, and we make balconies in such a way gradually till it finds its shape, where different programs are housed, and somehow it becomes like an element like this. Here are the floor plans show it as such, and gradually you have this kind of thing that emerges over site with a certain kind of, say, pride is at that moment in Albania again. Too much? Or not? Or do we need it? Is what it is. I know what we're talking about. So then the pyramid. We had a follow-up discussion last week, maybe. And that is this, say, a monument of the past, which is actually quite beautiful, but maybe it was not the good leader at that moment to do it. But maybe many people have memories about it. I don't know if there are Albanians in the audience, but but today it looks like that. And it has a funny combination of rawness and casualties. I mean, many people are going on climbing it and fall down. So how many people are more people dead because of this liberty than about the elements before? So what can we do? And that's very delicate. So why don't you say, okay, we clean up the environment. We open up the windows as much and we make stairs, basically. And then give access into this kind of, and you can do whatever you want on top of it, is what it wants to show. The inhabited monument, from this to this. Is that what we are now considering, and how it turns into an open park? And that is the discussion that we are entering. I don't know how it looks like that. It is a building made by people in the end of that. So that's New Albania. But what's next? And we talked about Tirana, but I think Albania has also an amazing treasure. And if I take you to the coast in that way, and you go there and you see the whoa, it's gorgeous, honestly. But then understand for a moment that you need to work on this also. And that is of course happening. Here, for instance, here you see, you're digging out in that way already new resorts with this kind of clients, Russian investors that wanted to make something and that say, yeah, we should inhabit it like this. So can we protect that? So how to do that in this case? So we try to make a policy plan how to, yes, to get money, you know. You have to earn something. But here in this case we just make a hotel that lifts the soil that's there and bends and carves out the patios. This is the floor plan, these are the houses, how the roof is done, how parts of the building are to be constructed, how this is then covered by this. So where is my resort? Is again the question. Yes, that's exactly the point. That you can go to your house, walk over it and find your destination as such, and that you have this view to the surrounding. And in the evening, when this kind of images are there, then it is, I think, nicer than James Bond ever had made. So what's the next as such? I take you to the gorgeous. That's this site, in a way. It is a nice site, I have to admit. That's a public beach. But how to, and they wanted to have a huge building all over this beach, in this beach. So we could manage the W Hotel, one of your favorites here, is in a way how to do that. And by reducing the program into one, say, stick, and just throw it from the air, then maybe you have a beauty that can be seen from Italy. Hello Italy, here I am, as it was wants to say. But respects the public beach. It becomes a bridge from one end to the other and is a beacon from far away in this kind of landscape, silver as such. Here how the floor plans are done and how we're now, here you see Arab, think about say the structure, how the lift will be drilled in the rocks and then turn it into an advertise. And that's funny. If I think about Albania, I have to think about this. At that moment, the gorgeous will be there and Yuko will be out and Albania will be in. And that I like. I love Europe. And I hate what the UK has done. So I think it's fantastic to have our new members. And that's celebrated by architecture and by urbanism as such. Okay, let me now go to the last chapter. Well, I staged basically the dream, the green dream. I walked with you through history and how to conceive basically new steps as such. And of course, ultimately, we are thinking about liberty. And we have to deal about that. I did for a while ago to Shenzhen. That was funny. This is 10 years ago. Where on this site we had to design a new town. And it should look like this, basically, in a way. Where people want to go to a selling area. And what shall I choose? You cannot choose in that way. Now a new middle class is coming. So how to do that? If this is the site, we imagine simply to do this. You make what you want. And then you have a beautiful town in that way. China. So how to do that? Here, with the plots, these are the rules. You greenify, you make bigger plots, you make what you want. And then you have such a kind of, say, environment, what it wants. You start here, and then it grows to that in a short time. So here, how the patchwork is simulated, how we addressed it in software, to calculate the ground price basically, and to help people to choose in density and in environments. We prepared that for the city. So we worked for a year long to imagine that you can be a city maker, that the younger generation can do that, that we can show it in our devices. Yes, this dream of the war was already there, and then it didn't work out. We were not allowed after a year, after winning the competition to make it. The planning bureau was not accepting it yet. So, but this was like invented in China, and now we make it in the Netherlands. Funny situation, in that way here in Leiden, we tested at the moment with this neighborhood, how we can imagine that you can build what you want.
based on a parking garage with meetings like this, and people can calculate the costs, and then they make these kind of houses. They came with their houses that are now built everywhere and form this kind of, say, mini streets that create a sheltered environment for kids and for people as such, and for plants. So what is the next? I take you to Almere again. This other side, I want to show you how social mechanisms can make cities as such. Here in this area that looks a little bit like Russia, I'm aware, but where new houses have to be made, and in this diagram, where we say, okay, you can do it, but always you have to work with a farmer or with a farming institution, so you have to share a piece of the pie. This is what you can then do, and the software accompanies that. So that leads from, you can do it alone, you can do it with more people, you can do it with a lot of people as such, and then you have always a house that's surrounded by gardens, but you have to do it yourself. You have to make your own roads. Yes, you have to reserve a track on your land for the neighbors that come afterwards. You have to solve your water, clean it yourself, because you can be free to do what you want, but you cannot harm your neighbor, is what it simply says in that way, also with the energy. So here you can see it, how it can be the different plots that you can imagine, that starts on this site, and then you go around it and makes an urbanism which is surprising, which is not a slum, it's middle class, I know, but has this kind of, say, appearances where this moment of egoism is shared with egoism. As such, and that is now tested in this zone and grows over the coming 5 years to there. So how the first zone was imagined with this, say, initiative, to this plan. And what is next? I just show you what happened in a year, last year, where in this year, this kind of plots are like bought or negotiated in this, say, negotiated. These are the people in groups, with bigger groups, other groups, that make now a combination of housing and agriculture, that make different kind of, say, water systems or plantations. Here you see other initiatives that come up and that create a surprising, I would say, juxtaposition. And what's next? The coming year, these kind of groups are there. So I do hope that you go there and talk with these people to imagine that the next city can be made by people like you as such. And I take you to Eindhoven. It's also the year of Eindhoven. Why? Because I became supervisor. And I think is it a nice job or not? Nah, I'll test it for a while. I think hopefully it's a bit generous to people. My contract here is it seen, and this is Eindhoven. Eindhoven is insanely ugly, and that's why it's nice to work there, because these are kind of all the images that are there. What can you do at that moment? A growing economy, growing from 250,000 to about 400,000 because of the chip industry, ASML, in that way, and because of the design academy and all those things. So it's amazing to see. So what are our tasks? I only show you one for the moment, the densification. And I started to make a shop. Here you can see it. Please come, ask people to discuss what you want to do it. And that was done together with White Factory over time. So how does it look like, that workshop? Let me give you some kind of data, because what data? Eindhoven has a center, no one lives there. So we imagine that simply invite 20,000 residents to come, 10,000 units, 1 million square meters. That's basically 45 towers in the coming 5 years to design. That's cool. We can make that tower. So how to do that is what it is. So of course we can do it in a kind of Swiss way, This kind of elements and such. The good thing, it shows that it's quite airy if we're going to do that. So that was one test. But then the students and the inhabitants made more tests. So I'll show you one. It takes a minute, so relax. Zen moment. Icons. Can we make them bigger? There are not so many of them. So how to do that? So you see them happening here. Every building that has some kind of potential. This is a nice guy. They have one UFO in Eindhoven, the Evoluon, the best building of Europe. So we try to imagine maybe to have one extra in it. And this students start to suggest where that could be. framers. It was a nice group. Basically, to make new factories or infillers. If you make a rack like that, you put things in, that it has maybe the potential, like here, to be a breeding ground, to have basically to dedicate space for it. And as Eindhoven with Philips is a kind of factory town, then we could position it in certain cases. There's kind of new factories that would could be stacked over it. It's a nice idea to see that. Or the extruders, that's also a nice one. If one thing is nice, and you should make it bigger. I love this church that they made. There's always this rule in the Netherlands that you're not allowed to build higher than the church. So the mayor was super enthusiastic about it. Because if you make the church higher, then we can do everything what we want. Go through some of this. When this came out of the models, when there was another site where density could be combined with a view on another church, where maybe when the new high-speed rail is coming, and yes, good answer, it is coming, then we could make also a better station where I can observe with you all this new panorama that can come there. That we maybe can make also housing like bridges that go from one destiny to the other and crosses some ugly parts. That we use also the neighbors to emphasize some of the buildings or make some of them larger. That put some of the frames here, like this is the Straat op 's Eind, but it's one of the most famous going out areas in the Netherlands. Get a kind of endlessness in that way, and how we can imagine even this kind of buildings on top of them so that you can have a kind of spectacle over the town. And why not in that way? Maybe like Albania, let's say some of our ancestors are like looking to our town, like in Himmelburg, Berlin, let's say what is happening in our Eindhoven. And then we can imagine also a place for the Evolution again in that way, or this kind of environment. Then we can imagine that we like sugar canes, we throw new houses over the roofs so that new inhabitation can be imagined here, how one of the racks could be done. And then here on the end, that even PSV, the sports club with the stadium that needs to be innovated, also shares this operation as such. That was wonderful. And you don't believe, of course, what happened then with that something. And that's what I need to show. Okay, one example to start with here, that is the Stadhuisplein. So we are asked to look at the Stadhuisplein, the town hall plaza. In that way, it's a bit ugly and empty, but it has the same size as Times Square. Interesting. Can we make a dance floor like I showed the saw in that way? This is the existing situation. These are the demands coming up of that growing town that wants to make towers, that adds to that. So what can we do? If you look at it at the moment, it's very boring, only offices. So we have to encourage other kind of programs in it. And if you look in that way to the openbare, the public space, it's not green at all. Can we greenify it with the roofs and with the extensions? If you look to the plinths, then it's very boring. It has snow plinths basically in blue and red only. So we have to extend that. We have to make a plaza plus also roads that we do in a specific way that I'm not going to explain. We make more connections to go through the bigger plots so that this kind of environments can come, these connections, and then we have new plots that are there. That leads to this kind of buildings. Eindhoven built just 6 stories high, with a park on top and some stairs that we did. We did that, you know that. And then we add some elements on top of it and discuss what it can be. Should it be small scale, like the villages that go over the program? Should it be tribunes? Should it be an advertiser, EHV, Eindhoven, in that way? Should it be framers, where you have some public program in the buildings that love it? Should it be figures that surround the town hall, famous figures from the past? Or do we somehow kind of mix of it? And yes, they chose for the mix. They couldn't choose, you could say. Eindhoven wants everything. And so we can start to build on the Eindhoven collection with you, with some of you, 45 towers, to do that. And that is coming up now. And next time I'm going to show you some of the detailed designs of these architects. And then what is next? And at the very moment, yes, I showed you, this is that church, you know, where you walk there. You see it over there? It's okay, the interior? Not a super... no one believes in God in Eindhoven. But so what to do with that? So here, now you can see the research that we are doing of this sketch that is there, and how it can look like. More Gothic than ever before, in a way. with, say, a path that brings you from earth to heaven, where we make many houses in this extruded church as such, that becomes then the beacon of Eindhoven. And we lift it without cracks. 3 meters per week going up and it's actually not too expensive to do it. It can be actually done. You create more ground price as such. That is what Eindhoven is going to be with this kind of advertisements that is now happening. So what is next after this? After having shown, say, a suggestion of new liberties that we could imagine, I want to bring you to some kind of conclusion. And that is, of course, the thing that you have shown partly last year, but that has been developed in what's next. So what is then, how can we create freedom or liberty also on a smaller scale? How can you do what you want, but still love your neighbor in the end? From ego to ego. That was the first exercise we showed last year with students at the Y Factory. And these are the egos. Every architect is a super ego. And then they have clients and they make their dream house. So here you see one guy, they analyze the guy. He was actually a weirdo because he loved to stay in bed and just to throw some balls. And that was it basically. That lead to this house. Or this one has another kind of design. Or this one, an acoustical one, or the plateaus, the more corporate one, the jolly one, or the library. So for anyone, I can make a beautiful house. That was done. But what is next? Because if you put them like next to each other, like Miami design district, this is boring. But if you put them then together into this thing, now we are talking. Because now you are pushed between each other. How much do you like each other, is what it wants to say. What do you tolerate? So you have games that are helping. There are many types. So you simply a blind game where you don't know what the other is doing. And shows this is on your screen. And this is then gradually happening to you. You have to be fed. And it goes in about 20 minutes, this game. 20 ideals confronted or negotiated in that game. And yes, if you're a little bit unlucky, you missed the boat. So what is next? That we also connect that to infrastructure. How to put infrastructure in that follows in that game your access as such. I love that one still. That the infrastructure is not setting like every urbanist does these days. It's following. And then I must say that the satisfaction factor is quite high in the blind game. That's what you see here in this, the different houses, how they look together on one facade, in a facade where the stairs are there. And now if I have a house like that, then I'm intrigued in my purple house. Why is my neighbor penetrating? I want to see his house. So not only on the level of the game is we, also in the physical experience in the end, you want to go around and see what everybody has been doing in that way and want to show it. So that I love that paradox that is somehow in our society, in a society maybe of a civilized middle class, I'm aware, and that we have somehow to cultivate as such that shows to it. So what is then next? Is that we built it in Shenzhen and in Eindhoven to test basically, and this was on the poster here on the door, with firemen, how can you do that if that happens in that way? So you go in, and you have this kind of stairs, you go further, and then you come into this kind of environment. My friend is coming, this is our bed, this is my toilet, and this is how I wash my hands. Everything is optimized as such, and how it can be done. And how it becomes then like an illustration of diversity as such. But what is next? Next step, and what we try to do is this, basically. It would be interesting to make it possible that you can order a room and negotiate it maybe every day. This is the hotel that we aim to have in October, where this is the facade, and you call in and then it makes your room. Today you have a big room. There are only 20 people. Or tomorrow you have a smaller one. But it finds for you the best position, is what this dream is about. But how to do that? So the first thing is simply like, okay, how much space do I need to help you a little bit? What is my echo, I could say. And that's what this device is doing. Or what if I am together and we cook together, and how much space do we need before we have a quarrel? And we start to fight, is what this game is about. And I love this one, because here every house is a nucleus, but how to negotiate that? So it tries to find out where there are the least amount of conflicts, is what it wants to do. And then you can see here in black there will be conflicts over time, the overlap are then improved and are in a very short notice. You know this algorithm, how that goes into this kind of optimizations, and here is your seed, here it starts to work. And then, yes, we make it from a for this moment, complex three-dimensional composition in a two-dimensional one in order to make it active. And then we can make, indeed, this kind of, say, cartridges that move around and find, say, the best situation in that way over time. This is a quickie how that could do that. I don't need stairs. The stairs are you, is what it says. I don't need lifts. The lifts are you. And that is what what this film is a little bit showing. Say it's a Friday afternoon, and a couple is coming. Here's my hotel, under construction. And number 3, that comes in. So it formulates, it's a situation. So an entrance can be opened, like that. So you can go in. There's your lift, your private lift that brings you up to your pre-configured situation. You move around to start cooking or working or sleeping, whatever it wants to be. So what is that next? Is to, of course, investigate how that works. You have 2 rails in this way. It's still mechanic, I'm sorry, it's not biological, and then you move it around. And these corners are, of course, very important to think. So how to construct that then. So here you see that rail work, the different elements, how they do, and what are needed to make this kind of, say, cartridges as such. And it lifts and basically moves these elements for cooking, for sleeping, and for everything around it. So what's the next in that way? And I want to show here, that is last month, what is now, say, under production. This robot, safety aspects, what kind of, say, carbon do I need to make the best, say, crossings as such? Can I make it speed bigger as such? And to try to imagine that this Vigo hotel would be then at a certain moment imagined. And that's what it is. And then I try to answer this Barba feeling, you know? That's the next step I showed last time. About that I want that everyone is like this. And that can be done maybe with this kind of molecules, this rubber that can bend. And let's say at that moment also ridiculizes a little bit this fascination, how much space I need over time. Here a life cycle, a day cycle of a couple that goes to work, that can close their house, that can shrink, that the office becomes bigger and smaller again in a while. And that's 75% of the cubic meters we are not using. And that also counts for our neighbors that blend together in this Vigo and endlessness is what this, say, suggestion is showing as such. So how to do that? Then we make this kind of film where we showed how much space do I need with it, how big should I be if I sleep or if I'm a little bit faster, a little bit walking around. See if we can do that. I'm not going to show that completely, but we have to measure. So there are this kind of captures, so like we do with Muybridge. So how much do you need in that way, and then you can fade out your space. How much do I need in front of me, like we showed later? Then yes, you know the shadow figure in a while, how big it should be when it blows away. You know how to mitigate gradually with all others in that way. That's what these tests are about. And then we can make in that way carpets that show that. Where we can test now what we do with all that knowledge, from this into a couch or into a table, into chairs, and to send that and to act on that. That makes this test maybe lovable in the end. And then we have to go further with the communication. So I showed this kind of talking napkins last year that say somehow celebrate that when I touch one napkin, that the other one reacts. You can see it here. Where I touch with my hand, and the other reacts. How does he or she react? Or if I talk, the voice with this wall element. So this is going wrong. soft balls, still nice pieces. You're doing it also. So easy prototypes. I'll show you only one test, don't worry. Because it's an introduction to the next step. So here are the panels. One of the guys says something. And he or she reacts that way. How to make that reaction. So that is going on. And what we did in the last Dutch Design Week, we tried to make also that based on your emotions. You know how to, some of you might know it with Philips, was it? With an artist that made it. So if you, certain colors could respect certain kind of emotions. Let's start from that. If you're a bit active, get excited, then you are red. If you're a bit blue, then it's a bit passive as such, etc. So if, for instance, this test is on, if you lie down and there's like light coming from above and it's connected to your brain, then it shows your situation. The curves say something about your emotions. This guy is like sleeping pretty well, and how that is then measured. I'm even halfway, I'm in a red zone or a green zone, and showing a little bit how my emotions react. So this is a starting point with VPRO to make, say, a next step on this kind of, say, emotional communication divide, as such. So that's what's next. But what's really next is, of course, Barba Mama, and that's what the group was working on, to make nature, to use nature for that. When anorganic becomes organic, a simple chemistry formula, how to do that. And I showed you the film, what the students have been doing. Then I'm back with Sapiens. And we'll say his observations, how bioengineering, cyborgs and inorganic life are confronted with that and make maybe the next message. We tried that last year. But imagine what will happen in our, say, computational science, in our robotic science, that went from, say, mechanics to nano to bio in that way, where our bodies would do something in the coming 100 years and deal with that new technologies in other way. And if you apply that on, in this case, the Rotterdam situation, then maybe this kind of transformability could be appearing in the coming 10 years. And maybe in 20 years we have this kind of transformers coming up. And then gradually we move into much more interesting, say, environments where it becomes more interactive, where suddenly some kind of new materials come in 100 years and lead to that. And maybe it leads ultimately to a dream which is between hippieism and organicness as such. Then somehow this fear for cyborgs become, in the end, simply landscape architecture. Simply beauty, and simply somehow accessible. And with that, and at that moment, we can make indeed a new planet. A planet which is much more green, which is much more intense and changeable, which somehow saves the climate by this new, say, sponge that surrounds it. And with that, I hope to give you a certain sequence, from green to historicness, certain liberty that leads to another kind of biology as such. And then I'm into this answer, maybe a little bit, of what this book has given for me. Thank you to one of you that has given that book to me. And that is that indeed there is direction, and that we construct to get that direction for better and for worse. And with that, I end my question for today. What's next? I hope to see you next year.
Thank you for yet another amazing journey into the power of urbanism, architecture, and design. I have to say, before I give the microphone to the audience, I have to say that I think you proved Harari wrong. He said that biology enables employment culture forbids. I think you just showed us inadvertently, maybe, I'm not sure, that, you know quite well that in his book, he mentions that the one trait that sort of separates this from the rest of the species, is that we have this ability to create fictions. So maybe this fictional scenario of urbanism, architecture, and design is one that allows us to create a fiction which culture enables. I think you just showed that to us. And some new thoughts, right? Would anyone have a question for me?
I'd like to start off by thanking you for so much information in such little time. And I especially find the WeGo research very interesting. But I want to go back to the building in the bridge in Korea. And I question the plant catalog, because you said all the plants are not native to the site. And that would mean that each of them needs a microclimate. And my question is, how much resources and energy does it take to create that microclimate? And why not optimize the system in order to have all native plants in order to save that energy? Or go one step further and make, I don't know, use biophotovoltaic systems or spirulina farming in order to generate energy as well?
Well, good question to explain. First of all, it's a very artificial environment. It is a bridge. And there's a limited amount of weight that I can put on the bridge to start with. Secondly, these species are from this area, are native, are completely embedded in this area. That means that they should survive in these minimum packages, but they are vulnerable because they are basically better in forests and so we have to help them a little bit. And that is, you can see this is like a laboratory to know how much energy and water that would cost. And that's in order to enable maybe developers, investors to calculate what their new buildings need in that way, how to pay for that, what kind of energy systems I need, what kind of cleaning systems of water I need, that ultimately are artificial per definition, but also create a lot of benefits from leisure towards oxygen, towards cooling, towards water storage, towards resilience that way, towards damping, sound, etc. So yes, we are measuring that. I mean, the project of the Green Dip is basically about that. I didn't have time yet to show that. Fair enough. And to see, because that's starting, and I'm also intrigued how much that helps in many places. And this one, you could say, is a kind of pre-research of other elements in that way. So I defend it with that, not more, not less. And I take people on that journey. When they walk over it, they're a bit of a part of that research as such. I'm happy with the next extensions, which are less, which is one species in every project. So that makes it, then you can apply it a little bit further. And yes, there are pieces that don't work after 1 year. We have also knowledge about that. There are other species that have gone, so that we put in these pots at this very moment. There are seedlings, there are siblings that have emerged from it. So I think it's up till now, somehow it combines this kind of laboratory function with the aesthetics and with a certain amount of maintenance that I can achieve under that kind of circumstances. 20 people are working on it every day. So it's I think it's fantastic to have such a potential. I hope I defended enough. Other questions? Was it?
Yes, it was a maybe question, but I'll go for it. Because lots of things are kind of happening in my head with all of this information, but I want to go back to what Agati asked you to talk about, right? Because it is about when the Starchitects dies and how, let's say, okay, it's a great question what's next, but if you would respond to the idea of the kind of iconic, a kind of Starchitect, how does the what's next relate to that?
There was let me first say that Agati's question was basically can the social parameters, can they drive architecture? So beyond, say, any architect, beyond, say, in that case, a star architect, and is that imaginable? I think concluded somehow with that is my, I hope you got that in that way. So what is then the reference to, say, the classic star architects? You should discuss it with Bjarke next week, but it's like also, because it's like, what do we do in that way? Do we what is that way the next, no. Give me a second, I can come back. So I do think that icons are still useful, or that you need somehow leaders, whoever it is who can be, to direct you a little bit from that, say, classical idiom of that star architecture, that iconic architecture that they delivered, which is mostly very expensive and mostly geometry driven or personality driven. And yeah, I think that is a task that maybe that this generation needs, or that the next generation maybe desires. So that is the combination of thoughts that I would address. Now's your next question.
No, I want to respond to that, because also actually I don't think it's bad that we have star architects, because also people need to do and show and live the dreams that you are talking about, because how else can we do it? So actually I think that it's quite nice as well, because we hear you talk and we also hear you make jokes, and so I think it's really good that you imagine, but also with that you discuss, let's say, questions around that, and it's food for thought. So I think that's why I also wanted to hear your response to that, because maybe we need them. In any case, we need stuff to get built and get out of just from a presentation, but actually showcase what the impacts are in order to make an evolution in this. So, thank you.
But that's not a question, but an answer. But that's fine. I hope I showed some build projects in it, and hope to show more in that way. In that case, and yes, everyone has a niche market. Let's be also honest. So that way it's also wise to develop your own niche market. The question is, how many niche markets are there? I'm curious. So also food for thought for you. In that way, if you are going to fill one niche in the future, because yeah, that's not only your right, maybe your obligation in that way. Other questions? Yes, please. Over there. Shall I go?
Hello, I have a question about Barcelona. Would you add or remove something in the city? Because I saw this project you did in that city, and I wanted to hear your opinion about the city. Thank you.
I find it very nice. That question has not been asked for 15 years, because somehow, yeah, we've seen that a certain crisis appeared, and that it was harder to think about the city of Barcelona a little bit in that way. I think I've given you quite some thoughts in the past. Some kind of relationship is there. Now when we were working with some of the students on Costa Rica, sold out that book, but I'd like to dream a little bit what the coast could be, what the role of mass tourism should be. And that comes now into practice after 15 years. That somehow you are discussing mass tourism more than ever, and that can only be compensated by space or by other activities. So trying to build it up at this very moment. That's why this exists, to build up Alter City, and that's why Poland now is somehow existent, maybe one of the nicest areas of the city. To consider that, and when are you going also to make the Tibidabo better? So I'm waiting for you to make this kind of Alter City. That's a motive of how Barcelona could be 3.0, to work on that, say, other touristic or non-touristic program, and to show that better. I think you do an effort on that situation. Yeah, the food production is simply an observation on how much food you produce in Spain. It is on its limitations. So to suggest new areas, your coastline is thin. It becomes thinner in the future because of the climate. So how to make enough to reduce maybe the import in that way, and to suggest you a roof landscape. Your roofs are flat, more flat than Amsterdam or than London in that way. So you can do it easy. That's what it wants to show in that case. But honestly, I don't. Yeah, it would be nice to formulate with your teachers who are leaders here to make your future Barcelona in that way. And now the institute needs it or deserves it. Beside the technological, say, abstract dream, maybe also with the political period, also to show what the city can be and what it should be economically and spatially, and learn then maybe from these lessons that we have discussed before. So I'm curious, and please invite me for the next Barcelona. Good question. I like it.
Hey Winnie, thank you so much for an amazing lecture. I had one small question. You know, when you were talking about this project that you were working in Shenzhen and then it was moved somewhere in the Netherlands and built, or is in process of building there. Do you think, also with the notion of star architecture and things like that, when a project is like, when this idea can be taken from a completely different context and applied in a very different context, do you think that says something about the state of architecture, about the context, about the decontextualization?
Yeah, there are a couple of answers to your question, because context is very important. I think we do a lot of contextual projects, but there are generic, say, components, like freedom is an issue that is desired in many places, not only in the Netherlands as such. Climate change or water protection or water is all technical, you could say these are technical elements that we have to adopt in our environments. Ours is freelance project, so it started in Shenzhen, then you see it now in Almere going on, and we do also one piece in Mannheim in Germany. We try to see what happens in these different economies or cultures, how they react to that. And it's, I told you it's funny that it took 10 years basically and then it's applied in other situations. It took another 5 years. I think right at this moment I'm excited also what happens in Southern, again in Shenzhen, where public-private partnerships are more and more allowed. You can tell about 10 cents what you want, and WeChat is probably more successful than WhatsApp. So there's is that private? Is it public? Can they now work on a new kind of city scale and with more people in that way? How does the next I cannot show you today, but that's what we are now working on. So the next CBD towers basically that you want to make a new generation of connection bridges basically. 30 bridges will be there in the coming 2-3 years. How to design it? What can they connect? But driven by developers and not by the state. I find that fascinating, this momentum at this moment. So yes, how does it go to? It takes some time. I have no conclusion yet. But these things, this shows a little bit the mechanism of what you can do. You are going to think it doesn't work at one place, then you see that it can be applied over there. I don't say that the same architecture will come up or the same composition comes out. That's what that is the wrong part. But concepts, and especially technical concepts, that has a global aspect, and that will sediment or petrify in another way under different kind of climatic, culturally climatic circumstances. That is what this project, I think, nicely shows. Nicely, according to me, but that's for discussion. Does it answer a little bit your question? So, I hope it was not too boring, the lecture, because that it was somehow gives answer to what last year. Some things were what I said last year. It is you ask a lot, to give every year a lecture is somehow suicide. That's to try to do that. And so I want to be open in that and to see, probably you saw things, hey, I saw that before. Other things that hopefully creates that aspect of time. And that if we are good managers of time, then I think maybe it's the nicest role that we can give to ourselves. And if it's eternal, to give your question or not, I don't know. But that's what the future will judge in that way. Now, thanks a lot. Let's have a beer.
Let's do it.